Every once in a while, a UFO researcher sometimes has to deal with a completely extraordinary story. There are stories that ordinary men would surely reject, but the complete reliability of some stories is very hard to establish, and sometimes it isn't impossible at all. Several months ago, I received materials from Germany that, according to my opinion, describe an authentic story. It was a report presenting an unbelievable encounter with alien beings being on board of a UFO craft containing 16 pages. The witness of that event was a 55-year-old Pole, an immigrant and an artist. The occurrence took place in the middle of August 1981 at about 5 or 6 in the morning. Mr. X, the witness preferred to be anonymous, as usual, without paying attention to the weather condition, went for a stroll in order to observe nature. He used to visit a small lake, Lindhill, located 4 kilometers away from Reda Wiedenbroek, where he lived. Having a bicycle by his side, he was walking a wild path. On the opposite side, there was a small harbor with a shed used by sailors. The witness noticed then a fisherman who was behaving in a very strange manner. Suddenly, a gigantic object appeared about 100 to 150 meters away and was hovering silently at an altitude of about 15 to 20 meters. It had no windows and resembled a plate turned upside. Mr. X thought that it was about to fall into water. He began heading toward the harbor, observing the object with curiosity and thinking if the fisherman also sees it. But the fisherman soon went away with 2 or 3 men dressed in strange sparkling suits. At first the witness thought that they were members of Ecological Guard and the fisherman was a poacher, caught red-handed. The object moved toward the harbor, being still at the same attitude. The witness was heading toward that UFO that was about 100 meters away. The bicycle was still getting in the way because the chain was broken down and the witness wasn't able to ride. The object soundlessly landed on grass near the shed. It was somewhat strange because, despite the ground inclination, the object was standing straight. It was about 7 to 10 meters in height and 30 meters in length. When the witness passed by signs with the inscription, "Sailors Area, Strangers Mustn't Went In," he saw that an elderly woman with a dog appeared at the back of the object. Mr. X thought it must be a super modern means of transport, and he even assured that he had German marks for a likely trip with it. It must float over the ground because the dog was walking freely under it. When he put the bicycle on the grass, the elderly woman passed next to him, heading toward the gate. Mr. X decided to go into the object and ask about the price of the trip and a schedule of the flights. He was assured that it was a terrestrial craft, because the presence of the woman with the dog at the place at 6 a.m. seemed somewhat strange to him. The craft had an oval entrance, without door. The man stepped on a pulled-out platform and suddenly could hear a ring on his bike. He turned his sight in that direction and saw a strange being dressed in a costume similar to those of the alleged guards. The being gave him a signal with its hand, and he knew that he mustn't approach. The being, that seemed to be semi-transparent, was observing the bicycle. The witness thought that someone else must also observe the object, because it was gigantic in size, and moreover fishermen and other people often visited the area. In Uitaslo, located 7 to 9 kilometers away, is a military airbase. Suddenly, the witness could smell something strange and felt vertigo. The surroundings were filled with the smell of burning rubber. He could clearly see the object and the beings, but after a while, he was sitting on an invisible bench. He was under examination of a certain humanoid creature standing in front of him. The entity was staring at him, and the man couldn't stand that gaze. He turned his head right and saw the fisherman. The being almost immediately ordered him telepathically to convey to it his satchel with documents. After handing it over to the being, Mr. X noticed that the fisherman sitting beside began taking off his clothing. Another being was standing behind him, and the witness understood that he must approach it. In my way toward the being, I was somewhat light, as if there was no floor below. I didn't have a sachet, and I didn't even know who I am. I saw a cut-off head of a cow without left eye and half of its horn that was also cut off. There were some chains in its jaws. There were also child's shoes and glasses. They put me on some kind of table. I felt likeness, as if I was devoid of some internal organs. The interior part of the object was lit with pinkish-violet glow. Mr. X believed that there must be many separate and transparent rooms in the craft. Then the alien ordered him to go into some misty blue-grayish room. The witness began taking off his clothes and could feel that his body applied passively a horizontal position. After a while, he found himself in a room full of beings dressed in suits. They were occupied with a task and didn't pay much attention to the witness. They were moving their heads and arms, but no appliances were visible. After some time, the witness was dressed up again and received a sachet. He hadn't got a belt and his watch stopped. Being on board the craft, he could see many rather odd things. Here's a fragment of his description. I could see many lights, and I don't know if in the ceiling or by a transparent floor, I saw an enormous city with illuminated tower blocks. Sometimes I was observing them from various positions, and maybe I was in some big machine or over it, somewhere far away, when it was a night and everything around resembled very much an illuminated city. The witness was given a narrow and thin belt, being 5 centimeters wide and 25 centimeters long. The man noticed that the hand that handed it over was very similar to that of a human. It was 5-fingered, but fingers were too long and had no human nails. The room seemed to be completely empty. The belt in the witness's hand began taking various forms. Once it was a square, then a triangle, or a wheel. When it was transforming, some signs were visible on it, and they resembled some of crop formations, but in another instance, the belt was transparent. According to the witness's report, the signs were 3-dimensional. Maybe it was some kind of writing or an alphabet of aliens? But why was he shown that? Maybe it was just some part of malicious game? Only aliens know the truth. The symbol could be regarded at any angle. The witness was still grasping the belt and even tried to bend it, but it was always returning to its original shape. It isn't a reminiscence of abilities of some metal elements found in Roswell, is it? As he said, something unbelievable, and additionally something beautiful and amazing. That thing was demonstrating incomprehensible knowledge. It was a manifestation of technique. The belt couldn't even be hidden in the pocket because it kept returning to its original shape. At one moment, the witness took his hands off, and the belt that should fall onto the floor simply began lightly hovering in the air and rotating excellently. After a moment, it slowly landed on the floor beside Mr. X's legs. He tried to pick it up again, but in vain because it was as if it fastened. The man looked at the alien being that stood nearby and at the same time the belt that returned to its hand. It seemed obvious that the being possessed a power over many things. Suddenly, in the man's hand appeared a small, transparent ball as big as a tennis ball. Its weight couldn't be estimated, but it sparkled with many colors. When the man hit that ball in his hands, it X-rayed them. He was terrified with the sight of his palm bones. He wasn't able to estimate the temperature of the ball. Terrified, He wanted to get rid of it, but it began drifting into the air the same way as the belt. It was as if a pumped balloon was getting bigger very fast. After a while, it prevented the witness from seeing the alien who was standing about 1.5 to 2 meters away. The man grasped it again, but it seemed weightless for him. The ball was emitting an image from inside, something like a three-dimension show. There were impossible things inside. From a chaos, a multitude of colorful stains divided by lines, they formed some images. What appeared was a tower measuring pressure from the town where he lived, and then a town hall and a tower block standing in vicinity of his house. Then other similar elements were seen, for example, church towers, playing fields, parking lots, etc. Mr. X saw even himself holding the ball and looking into it. He wanted to turn it in his hands, but it transformed into a big glass circle, about 7 to 10 meters wide, then got smaller immediately and transformed into the original ball. Then it disappeared, unexpectedly. The alien standing in front of the witness wasn't expressing any emotions at all, and his face remained expressionless. I smiled foolishly because it was weird, cool, and funny. I haven't seen something like it before. The humanoid was looking at me as a king at a clown. Anyway, I found myself unexpectedly on a scrap heap. Mr. X woke up 5 kilometers away from the lake he had been abducted, and that's how his encounter ended. Stunned and suffering a terrible headache, he was sitting, leaning his back on the wheel of an old bus. It was as if he had a terrible hangover, except that he hadn't participated in the party, but in something unexplainable. Mr. X looked at the watch in the car, standing next to a road, and noticed it was 9 a.m. He also noticed that he hadn't got the belt and his bike. Taking a bath in his house, the witness noticed that he is tanned and his skin was reddish brown. His whole body was sunburned. I was ashamed of going to the city hall because I could stir up the clerk's jealousness, because when I'm doing nothing more than sunbathing, they must work hard to 4:30 p.m. He was very tired. Then he discovered that the mysterious encounter left an impressive mark. He became a painter, and this work allows him to live in good conditions since today. This fact reminds me of another case of a 45-year-old man from Puławy, Poland, that also developed his talent in painting after his encounters with E.T. On the same exact day he was abducted, the witness went to that place with his friends. Over the past couple of centuries, some people have purportedly turned up who say they are from cities and countries that don't exist. They speak unknown languages and give other indications. Some say suggest they are from parallel universes. In 1850, a man named Joffa Warren was found and questioned in a small town near Frankfurt, Germany. John Timms wrote about Warren in his 1852 Yearbook of Facts in Science and Art, which was praised for its accuracy by other publications of the time. Timms wrote, "We find it attested in the correspondence of Berlin that at the end of 1850 a stranger was picked up in a small village of the district of Lebas, near Frankfurt on the Oder. Whither he had wandered, no one could tell whence. He spoke German imperfectly, and had all the marks of Caucasian origin. On being questioned by the burgomaster of Frankfurt, the stranger said his name was Joffa Warren, and that he came from a country called Laxaria, situated in the portion of the world called Sacria. He understands, it is affirmed, none of the European languages, except, we must suppose, the broken German, but reads and writes what he calls the Laxarian and Abramian tongues. His purpose in coming to Europe, he alleges, was to seek a long-lost brother, but he suffered shipwreck on the voyage, where he does not know, nor can he trace his route on shore on any map or globe. He claims for his unknown race a considerable share of geographical knowledge. The 5 great compartments of the earth he calls Sakria, Afla, Asla, Ausla, and Eupla. The sages of Frankfurt and the Oder, after much examination of the tale in its bearer, believed it. However, Jova Warren was dispatched to Berlin, and there became the subject of much scientific and curious gossip in the Prussian capital.